Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you all. Good morning to you all. Let's get this sound underway. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Are we connected to galaxyfluid.net? Galaxy. There we go. I believe we're connected to Galaxy. I just want to do a quick check that we are connected to our listeners in the mixed clouds. And I believe we are connected to our listeners in Mixcloud. We're also connected to our listeners on Facebook. Equally, we are, of course, connected to our listeners on YouTube. So let's get this show on the road. This is going to be a truly fascinating show. Let's get this other stuff off. There we go. Let's get the show started. Welcome to you all. Welcome to you all. This is going to be a truly fascinating meeting today. But more importantly, it's going to be an educational show, more so. I'm going to put the recorder on. Let's get the recorder going. Now we are set. Welcome everyone to the Motivator show, the Motivator show, usually alongside Lady Chelsea, PhD beckons for her. She'll be back when she can. In the interim, we'll have guest presenters very soon. Watch this space. But for now, it's just me. So let's get the show underway. First of all, I want to give praise, recognition, of course, to Jaian King, who's taken us from, hey, night to day. Jaian King, blessings to you for your absolute determination. Of course, it's also important for me to give recognition to the Galaxy Management. I give praise and recognize Chipa Kombabai, the visionary leader and founder of galaxyafui.net. I want to give praise and recognize to the Elder Erekute. My elder, I hope you're well. Haven't spoken to you for a while. I trust all is well with you. I want to give praise and recognize, of course, and uplift. Okay, Dr. Abu Ratata, and of course, his lady wife. I trust you are both well and loving each other to the max. Praise be to you all. Praise be. I want to give a special recognition, of course, to that longest serving pilot, the man, the brethren with that wonderful name. Hey, Nickel, the most royal. Hey, what a name is. Hey, Nickel, praise be to you. Long may you continue your strength. Long may you continue that outstanding work on behalf of the community. Praise be. I want to give a special shout out, of course, to the solution finder, to Empress Shanice. You know, you listen to her programs, she doesn't complain and just mouth off. She looks for constructive solutions. Hey, with such women in our community, such emphasis in our community, we cannot lose as a community. Praise be, my Empress. Praise be, praise be. Long may you continue your outstanding works. Praise be. I also want to give a shout out to reminding you of a previous and most regular guest I've had on this show, Ndidi Ishowa. What she pointed out in one of her wonderful, insightful articles, that Africa's wealth is not found in its natural resources. It's found in the technologies that derive from those natural resources. Ndidi Ishowa. And she'll be here in a few weeks' time, I can assure you. Which she points out, that's where the wealth is. We as Africans must become technologists, master technology, because that's where the wealth is to be found. And that's where the future of mankind, womankind, is to be found. So I give a big shout out to the technologists, engineers, that have kept this station going for more than 35 years. Yeah, more than 35 years, a lifetime in many cases, 35 years. And we've moved from technology to technology platform to technology platform. So this program is transmitted not only through digital radio, through galaxyafui.net, but also via YouTube under the Motivator Show. DE space Motivator Show. I emphasize the space because I noticed there are others without the space and they're completely different personalities, not me. So it's D space Motivator Show on the YouTube, so you can both see and hear my presence. Similarly, if you network with me on Facebook, again under the Motivator Show, please, you can find us via Facebook. And of course, you can also listen to us via Mixcloud, and of course, under the Motivator Show. Okay. And we welcome your listening and your visual parts of your bodies, but equally important, please give us a like, those thumbs up when you see it, please give us a like, or if you wish, you can subscribe or follow us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and indeed on Mixcloud. There is no charge applied. I emphasize there is no charge to follow us. But what it means that you receive pre-advice on the subject matter I will address in each show, and also validates, get validation to the fact that the show is having a widespread impact. That validation goes a long way, okay? It goes a long way. Go to YouTube, and just follow us on YouTube. I couldn't subscribe, but it means follow. That's what it means. Follow this channel. Why not? Yeah. Of course, you can listen to us via galaxyafui.net, via the digital radio, on your computer, on your phones or whatever. That's another way of communicating with us. And indeed, via Facebook. Again, you can follow us via Facebook and of course on Mixcloud. Yeah, I say all that because I'm told I don't do it enough. I should put some animations on screen. I will, and we'll need to curate some of the earlier shows. I will do that, don't you worry. But nevertheless, these shows are intended to empower, to inform, to empower. It is intended to translate these words into action. And you feel empowered to take those actions. No longer should you ever think of yourself as being second best, No longer should you ever think of yourself as being oppressed. Here, you're empowered to take action, to get involved, to assert yourself, for your voices to be heard. That's why these shows are important. And today's show will be a topical but sensitive subject, but one we have to face on. In politics, I always say to those who are entering politics, it's better to look forward and face your accusers, your critics, head on. Don't look away. Don't look away, because they'll only chase you anyway. They'll only chase you. Look at them in the eye. And whatever it is they want to challenge you on, you be ready to take on that challenge. And I don't mean physically, I mean with your mind, your intellect, the power of your strength of personality, your intellect, yeah? Your understanding of the subject, your ability to articulate the subject to which they are seeking to criticize you, but you take control of that subject and you ensure the points, your points, are got across to them. They may not accept it, but they will respect you. And in politics, as in with life generally, respect means far more than anything else you may wish to weigh the trials and tribulations of life against. And this show will address that subject as well in our own amicable fashion. But before we get to the substance of today's show, I just want to go through the usual parts of why, emphasize why these parts of the show are important. I want to talk about health, our health. That's what I want to talk about, okay? Because in our community, and when I say our community, I have to be really deliberate. I'm of African heritage, although born in the Caribbean, but I've lived most of my life, in fact, virtually most of my life, here in Britain. I'm for all intents and purposes British. Okay? I accept that, but I'm of African ethnicity from the Caribbean, okay? Specifically, in my case, Jamaica. I say that because plotting one's roots gives you a sense of belonging and certainty. Your lineage is very important, okay? Very, very important. I pause that point because I want people to absorb what I've just said, okay? And be proud of your heritage, okay? I speak to many English people who I say were English until I discover that their roots are actually in Germany or France or Belgium, in some cases even Russia. Okay. Britain is a multitude of ethnicities. This identity which we call British means that you have multiple, you are truly multicultural, multi-ethnic. I'm indeed multicultural, multi-ethnic. Okay. And you highlight that aspect of your heritage, which defines, you choose will define your identity. It's your decision. It is your decision. But just as importantly, though, it is your decision how you take care of yourself, okay? So I started off by saying that in our community, we have unusually high levels of medical maladies. What I mean by that, high levels of diabetes, hypertension, heart conditions, cancers. And many of these are caused as a result of our lifestyle and in some aspect to our cuisine, integral to our lifestyle. And I feel it's incumbent upon me to raise this with you all repeatedly, so eventually, I hope, will get through to you. I know many will resist, many will shut off at this point. I recognize that you're not ready to hear the messages. But I'm not an expert. But as an elected public official, I can see what's around. Okay, I can see the impact of us not addressing these matters head on. Okay. So I ask you, please, to consider the amount of sugar you're ingesting. Okay. Sugar, we often take as children, and we feel it's a pleasure. Give pleasure to us, and give pleasure to children, most certainly, and to adults, of course. But the long-term impact of sugar on our bodies, our physiology, as it were, as a previous guest of this show highlighted, Elijah Timop, the nutritional pharmacist. Okay, he pointed out that what it does cause is insulin resistance. In other words, you don't process sugar properly, and indeed you develop type 2 diabetes. So excessive amount of sugar accumulated, in other words, accumulated over time, can have and is having a negative impact on our bodies. We're consuming far too much sugar, and we're teaching our children bad habits. Developing a sweet tooth means that they will consume above normal levels of sugar throughout their lifetime because they've developed sweet tooth, we've in effect imposed upon them. But children are but innocent creatures. We've imposed it upon them. We as parents must do better by our children. If you're going to give them a sweet, give them just one. It's a treat, not these bags full of sweets. Adults, do you need to add these spoons of sugars to your coffees and your teas? And do you need to consume these sweet drinks and so on in the quantities that we consume? In each of our families, we'll know of someone with hypertension, with diabetes indeed. Yeah. Hypertension, someone with a heart condition or a cancer. Yeah. We know of them. Yeah. Someone who is overweight, with bloated bodies, we know of them. And we recognize the harmful impact of sugar. I ask you, please, if you can't stop it, and I recognize for many you can't, simply reduce it gradually, as I've been engaged in. I developed a sweet tooth as a child, took it to my adulthood. And once I studied sufficiently and listened to the experts, I recognized that sugar would eventually have a harmful impact upon my body. So I've been gradually reducing sugar. I no longer, for example, buy the kilos or 2 kilos of sugar from the grocery store. I no longer do that, okay? Let's be clear. And I've made sure that where I encounter sugary food, I'll look at them, I'll smile, and I'll think of those wonderful times when I was a child, but I no longer eat them. I never do eat them, if I may say so, forgive me, I contradicted myself, there you go. Just small quantities. But otherwise, I don't really eat them. Yeah. I have to grow beyond my early conditioning. It's important, I say to you all, to grow beyond your early conditioning. It's hard, trust me, I know it's hard, but it's vital because we have above average levels of diabetes in our community because we're not evolving out of our childhood behaviors. And lastly, I'll just say on this subject before I go into hypertension and sort. And I know I say it every week, I want to emphasize, I encourage you all to look it up. Professor Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the University of West Indies, in a speech a few years ago, noted the abnormally high levels of diabetes in the Caribbean. And he cited sugar being the primary cause, unusually high levels of sugar in our diet, which is prevalent not only in the Caribbean, part of Africa, but certainly here in Africans in Europe and Britain, and most certainly in United States of America and across the Americas. We must change our behaviors. It's difficult, but for your own sake, all of our sakes, please, I commend that behavior change to you. Similarly, I ask you also to consider the amount of salt we're ingesting into our bodies. Salt, we assume we add to our diet because we want to enhance the flavor, okay? But in fact, we don't need the additional salt we add to our diet. It's only there as a false flavoring tool. It masks the actual flavor of the foods. So I ask you, please, to consider the amount of salt you are ingesting into your body, the hardened arteries, the raising of our blood pressure, okay? It's another one of those consequences of too much salt in our bodies. I ask you, please, to consider the amount of salt you are ingesting and the long-term impact salt might have on your bodies. Equally, I ask you to consider the amount of fat and carbohydrates you're consuming. Fats, of course, found in meats. I've given you the story of going to the butcher and seeing the white stuff in the steak and asking the butcher, are you going to charge me less for the white stuff, which is just fat, versus the meat? And he laughed and said, no, it's there to give you flavoring. I said, no, I don't need that flavoring. But he didn't have a matrix to allow him to separate the price of the fat versus the meat. And the fat is definitely harmful to you. It is definitely harmful to you. But we're still paying for it. It's about 10-15% of the meat product we purchase. So I ask you to consider the amount of fat and carbohydrate primarily from the flour products that we consume in vast quantities, you know. Please, I ask you to consider the quantum that you're consuming each day and the impact it has on your body. Because when you see both men and women with bloated bodies, you know, bloated chest and thighs and abdominal areas, it is not good. And I'm not an expert. I know it's not good for you. Yeah, particularly if you don't exercise. It's definitely not good for you. Yeah, you're burdening your bodies in ways that shorten your lives. I can say that as a matter of fact. If I've got that wrong, please, doctors, please call to put me right. I'd be most grateful. If I'm right, please, I ask others, hear and heed these words. Consider the amount of fat and carbohydrates that you're consuming each day. Consider it and actively seek to reduce it where you can. I know it's difficult to drain the fat off your meat as far as you can. I know it's difficult, but for your own sake, please. Our community is suffering under illnesses, self-imposed illnesses. I ask you also to consider the amount of starch, you know, principally from rice type products, you know, which we convert to energy. In other words, we store it in our bodies. We eventually convert it to energies. We don't need the quantum of rice that we consume each day. I ask you, please. And if you are to eat all these products, as Elijah Timop, the nutritionist pharmacist, pointed out to us, we simply eat too much of these products anyway. Our food, our plates are too full. We eat too much. We should try to eat no more. I laugh at this. No more than a fistful of food. I know. I've been trying. A fistful, he says. A fistful is what he recommends. I need to get him back here, I think. We need to talk about those quantums, you know? But that's what he says. We eat too much, which is a further reason why we suffer unduly as a result of our cuisine. He also went on to point out that if we are to recover, we've got to eat far more fruits and vegetables, far more fruits and vegetables, organic if you can, but most certainly eat far more fruits and vegetables. The straightforward, simple advice, a bit of common sense once we think it through. Fruits and vegetables. We've got to, of course, drink appropriate amount of water each day, 2 to 3 liters, depending upon your body mass, your height, and your girth, and so on. You know, if in doubt, go to your GP, go to your doctor. Okay, speak to a specialist, a nutritional pharmacist, as is Elijah Timop. Yeah, go to people like that. People who actually know what they're talking about and might have access to your medical records and therefore are able to give you the right advice that is suitable for you. I'm giving broad general advice, but please, yes, take aboard what I've said, but test out what I've said with your doctor, with your specialist, okay? And they will create a nutritional regime that is right for you based upon your medical history, family history. It really is important. And of course, it's vitally important, having taken care of your nutritional intake, that you exercise. Exercise is mission critical. We cannot survive without exercising our bodies. And I don't mean, as some person just said to me yesterday, well, I go to work, and I walk to the bus stop, and yes, the bus takes me to my work. I walk around all day, but that is not exercise. Deliberate exercise causes you to sweat. Yep, raises your heartbeat, above 100 beats per minute, Real exercise, you will feel your body raising itself in response. That's exercise. Work is work. And trust me, if your heart was racing above 100 beats per minute as was in your office or your place of work, then that's an interesting place of work you're in, okay? Right? Okay, that's just work, yeah? Exercise, it's where you deliberately use all your muscles, engage all your muscles in your bodies. That's exercise. I urge you, if you don't get out in the morning, in my case, I get up in the morning, I go for a short run, or I'll do stretching exercise, or do my weight. Oh, I've got my weights here. Or do my weights, yeah? Particularly if I can't get out, do lots of weights, yeah? Just so that I'm flexing my muscles and doing enough so I can start to race my heart. Vitally important. Your bodies demand that type of treatment. Why? Because we are genetically hardwired to be exercise, physical exercise, physical activity. We're genetically hardwired for that. And if we don't do that, our bodies assume that we're closing down. Yeah? And what closing down means that you reduce your immune response when you encounter viruses and bacteria and so on. Closing down means that you can't stay up as long as you'd like during the daytime. You're always feeling sleepy. You're feeling weaker. You're feeling, no longer as you were when you were younger. Yeah? And your body just wind down. And premature winding down is caused by the way in which we treat our bodies. It's your decision, not mine. It's your decision. You got to decide for your loved ones, for yourself, for your loved ones, and those who respect you, that you want to stay here in this planet, experiencing life for longer than the previous generations. It's your decision to make decisions, to make a transformation in your life. And lastly, I'll just say to you, having said that we need to take care of our bodies, having said that we need to ensure that we eat well, exercise, you've got to take care of your minds, okay? And of course, I always say that if you feel uncertain in terms of your mentality, please seek professional advice. If in doubt, seek professional advice. If you're feeling down or feeling with low energy, I recommend meditation. Meditation for at least 20 minutes or so per day. You adjust it to what suits you. Allow yourself to settle, push away all the cares and worries of the world. Take a deep breath and close your eyes and meditate, And trust me, you do that for 20 minutes at least per day, it will be transformative. Your attitude, your outlook, your feelings of well-being will be raised. Reparations starts with self. Self-repair is the first key to us gaining true reparations. Okay, I'll pause there, but I hope those messages, in fact, I know those messages are gaining traction with many families who are listening to this, or individuals who are aware that they have particular conditions which are fundamentally lifestyle conditions which are avoidable. And they recognize, because a doctor or specialist has already said much of what I've said, but that individual hasn't yet fully responded. Please respond. And if you don't have any of those conditions which I've mentioned today, eating well, exercising well, meditating, raising your energy levels, your spiritual feelings, then you'll live a long, prosperous life. Keep watching this show, and I hope we'll this will be a well-informed life as well. Okay, let me move on. Thank you. And thank you for those letters and words of encouragement I've received these past weeks. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. I want to give a big shout out, if I may, to that wonderful guest I had last week. I want to give a big shout out to Paulette Hamilton, MP. Wasn't she wonderful? The first member of our community, person of African heritage, to be an MP in Birmingham. Hey, it's taken to 2020s in the 21st century. Wow. Britain, What a country, It's taken until that time. but she is, I know she will continue to be an outstanding member of Parliament. Paulette, please, you were wonderful. Oh, please keep listening to us. You were wonderful. You gave us all help and advice. Not only that, you gave us, wow, hope for the future, that regardless of who you are, man or woman, yeah, younger or older, yeah, you can get into the Houses of Parliament. Well done, Paulette Hamilton MP for Erdington in Birmingham. Well done. I look forward to you coming back again to share with us your first year in Parliament. Now that should be interesting to hear. Share with us a few of those experiences in Parliament, okay? So thank you, Paulette. Wonderful interview. Thank you for being a tremendous person. Let me also just quickly give a big shout out to Mr. Gordon, the head teacher. Now you recall, the head teacher of Golding Goodling School in Deptford in South London. One of his students is now recognised globally as being a mathlete, I think his term, a mathlete, okay? Age 8, that's in year 3, she is the most accomplished mathematician in the world, a mathlete, okay? Mr. Gordon, another example of a head teacher from our community, demonstrating to the education profession that from our community, we have excellent in leadership. He's demonstrating, regardless of your economic profile, regardless of the community that you come from, that you can excel when given the right leadership, the right encouragement, the right tutoring from a trained professional. Mr. Gordon, on behalf of the community, thank you. A hearty thank you. And we hope in a few weeks' time to have the student and her parents, the mother, with us on this show. Oh, I really cannot wait to be able to applaud that mother and child together. Watch this space. Watch this space. Now, I now want to move on to the purpose of today's show. Okay. First of all, I want to continue the theme where the overwhelming majority of my guests will be women. I want to give praise and recognition to the achievement of women and their contribution to our community, our life and times, okay? I will make sure that's understood. It's very easy for us men to get really bound up for ourselves, but I want to give recognition to women, okay? Doesn't mean I have to agree with them all the time, because clearly that'd be stupid. I don't agree with most men most of the time, you know? But what I want to do is recognize the determination, the intellect, the love, the caring, the wholesomeness that are women, okay? So I want to give praise to them, okay? I want to give praise to Forward UK. You recall that organization set up by Black women for Black women, okay? And what they demonstrated, Forward UK, you can put in your search engine, Forward UK, that's one word, okay? Put into your search engine. What they demonstrated is that when women organize with a focus on women's issues, and in the case of when I engage Forward UK, we engage them on the basis of FGM, female genital mutilation. And I want to commend Forward UK, who addressed a whole host of other issues that impact upon women. I want to commend Forward UK to the audience. And if you're a woman and you're looking for an organization to work with, Forward UK is one organization I absolutely can recommend. Okay, and I know a representative from Forward UK contacted myself recently. I've got your message and I will be responding to you. Don't you worry, don't you worry. But today's program we'll address the issue of abuse within our families. Okay. Now, abuse comes in many forms, and my guest will give rise to a number of forms of abuse. Okay. I know for some of you, this will be a little sensitive. Either you have been abused, or indeed you might be been a past abuser, or it may be happening right now. Okay, I recognize this is sensitive. As you know, I'm an elected official. I've said one of the principles I operate on is that when there's an issue, you cannot shy away from it. You have to face it head on. Only when you face it head on, you're engaging. Do you have opportunity to initiate help, create hope towards healing? Yes, you see it above me. Help, hope, healing. But you see on my left-hand side, that cry, you know, help me. And that's been said by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of members of our community. Too many are young people, our children, who are saying this. Okay, help me. And I've had, again, in my public life, to encounter families where this call for help is being responded to. And the experiences that I've had are, well, they are truly experiences, and some are horrifying, but some are very hopeful for the future. But it would be remiss of me not to conduct a program in which we look at abuse that happens within our families. Instead, it may take a number of forms. It could take a form of sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. Abuse can take many forms. Okay, but we need to look at this so we understand the forms that it takes, so we have an opportunity to recognize it. And I hope at the end of the show, you have roots for remedial action, healing, curing, genuine hope. Okay. So it is going to be really important that the audience are unafraid both to listen to this show and to respond positively to its contents. Okay. It'll be vitally important that you are not afraid. This is and will be a safe place. Okay. A safe place for us to discuss these issues. I know many will be reticent to express a view, therefore to call in. I understand that, but I hope that my guest, who I hope has arrived here, I hope my guest will provide the information, first of all, the understanding, and then the information we need to empower ourselves that the help that we need is there. We'll build on the hope that will lead us towards genuine healing. Okay. So I appreciate the sensitivity, but this is a show we had to do. Not a question of wanting to do, we had to do it because it's a part of our reality. And bearing in mind that this is not a new subject matter, it's not a new event, which has just happened in the past few years. This has been a prevalence in all communities for millennia. But here, today, we're going to face it. We're going to discuss it. We're going to dissect it. And then we're going to find ways in which we can resolve it. So let's see then. Let's get this ball rolling. And hopefully my guest has arrived. Can I see her? Oh, I see a young lady drinking water. Oh, I see a rather Oh, very beguiling young lady drinking water. Oh,
you're getting brownie points. Keep going.
oh my gosh, you just keep that up. Your smile. Oh, look at that smile. I feel happier already. Oh, oh, come on, come on. Oh, yeah, now. Wow. Yeah, forgive me, I'm a bloke, so please forgive me. Please forgive me. When I see a wonderful, happy woman, I'm not going to say beautiful. I'm going to let me say not all. Let me explain.
I can
what I see is not your physicality. I see your spirit. I see the warmth of your spirit, and I see you smiling at me, and I feel so good already. So I have to reflect back to you. Oh. Hey, you just keep that up. Oh, beautiful, huh? Roz. Now, I'm going to pronounce your name, your surname. I see it on screen. And to me, that surname of yours gives me such strength. Roz et Warrior. Is how I pronounce it? Wow, et Warrior. Now, I'm just going to say Warrior, Roz. Can I say that?
It rubs against the fact I'm a pacifist.
I'm not going to probe you on that for the moment because I know you. I've had the opportunity as part of my preparation for this show to speak to you on a number of occasions, okay? I know you. So I'm not going to question your pacifism because you know what? War has damaged the human species in so many ways over many, many thousands of years, okay? All right. But it's a subject we may pick up on another occasion, another time. But I want to address the issue of today's show, because I'm conscious that time flies, particularly when I've got wonderful intellects before me who are able to talk to the subject in such depth that it becomes truly captivating. You just lose track of time. And I'm conscious that's going to happen. Each time I've spoken to you, I become totally enamored, totally absorbed by your understanding, your clarity, your depth of knowledge, your wisdom. I just want to listen and learn from you. And today's program will give the opportunity not only for me to listen and learn from you, but for the audience to listen and learn. Roz, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you. Okay. And I want to get straight into this. So I should just give a quick flag that you were a former co-presenter here on GalaxyAfui.net. So that's a quick flag. So just make sure everyone knows, okay? So you have a natural ability to communicate. You're indeed, you won accolade for your ability to communicate well to a diverse audience. And I'll give light to those later on, but I just want to focus on yourself. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Secondly, I found you, not only because I know you here at Galaxy, found you through your website. Because I had a number of instances, as you know, I'm an elected official, of where I encountered abuse in a number of families in my political ward that I represent. And each of those instances were truly emotionally wrenching experiencings, really emotionally wrenching, so emotionally wrenching. In each case, I don't mind telling you, I found these things, you just got to say it. I cried, tears. Yeah, I couldn't help it. It just, what I experienced was just traumatic, truly traumatic, okay? And one of those, of course, is where there's abuse of children, specifically girls, usually girls. I've only encountered one encounter with boys. Boys tend to be different abuse, but most certainly in this type of abuse, where it was some sexual abuse, I've got to use the term. I know YouTube doesn't like it, you see, but sexual abuse. It was horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And as a man, I felt less than that another man would do that, not only to a child, but to his own child. It was this awful, absolutely awful and degenerate behavior. Okay, yes, so I can control my emotion. I'll control my emotions. And I realized that we haven't yet tackled this issue on this show, because this is the Motivator show where we translate our words into action. And I remind people success is ours for the taking, you know? So it's an issue we do not discuss enough as a community. So, and I did my research, I came across this wonderful website called Little Row. And just by spiritual coincidence, who is Little Row? It is Roz, at Warrior. Wow. Now, that isn't just coincidence, if I may say so, Roz. Our ancestors are looking over us and guiding us towards each other, you know, and it was intended this encounter, this show would happen, okay? It was clear that you were extremely knowledgeable. Your research, your action in this field is second to none, in my view, okay? And if local councils not engaging you, we jolly well should, okay? We jolly well should. So, Roz, first of all, I'm going to invite you, first of all, just say a little bit about yourself, and then to explain to us why you set up the website Little Row. Over to you.
Thank you very much. What can I tell you about myself? I am somebody who is passionate about change, and I very much believe that in order for change to take place, it must be an inward journey, not an external journey. Once you are in that position, then you are able to do the things passionately and fully and wholeheartedly that are important to you. And of course, my leading philosophies in life are Taoism and Ubuntu. So that takes us to the human root and the spiritual root and philosophy of who and what I am. Little Row isn't me. It's part of a company known as the Kairos Generation, and Little Row is an initiative of the Kairos Generation that I have the privilege of being the project director for. And what it does, it looks at victim survivors of childhood sexual abuse. It is something that penetrates throughout our society. And we don't deal with it at any level. We don't deal at it at a community level. We don't deal with it in various cultures at a cultural level. And we sure don't look at it as a wider society. LittleRow.org was designed to do some of that work, not all of it, we're not that big, we're not that strong, but to do some of that work and raise awareness around the fact that this happens. It happens in all communities, it happens in BIPOC communities, and it's a conversation that I'm passionate that we all need to have, because it doesn't just affect one person. Childhood sexual assault leaves the child unprotected, but to grow into an adult who hasn't had the opportunity to be all that they can. It steals from them the possibilities their life could have been. And that's because the abuse mentally affects those who it's been perpetrated upon. All abuse does it, by the way. So let's be clear. Childhood sexual abuse is one type of abuse that leads to a trauma that affects the brain, but so does neglect, and so does beatings, and so does all of it. But this particular one, we find horrible. We can't touch it. It scares us. It puts us in the place of disbelief. And in that place of disbelief, it means that we're leaving children unprotected. So we have to deal with it. We must look at it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And just so I'm clear, the name Little Row, it's a curious name. Why Little Row? Why is it called Little Row?
So little refers to child or small, but it also refers to the fact that I see adult children. So you may be grown in years, but in terms of one's emotional well-being, in terms of one's emotional intelligence, they haven't formed, they're still very childlike. So that's what the little comes from. The road comes from the fact that I wanted to rule out the risk of childhood sexual assault. Big dream is not going to happen in my lifetime, but let's work towards something. Also because I have a passion for radio, I'm on various stations. So RO means radio. And of course, RO also is an abbreviation for rescue officer. So all of those things combined together, you've got Little Row. So we've got to get out there. We've all got to be rescuing officers. We've got to speak about this on all the radio stations, and we have to rule it out. Hence, Little Row.
I understand you. So it's littlerow.org.
Yes.
Okay, but there's some listeners on the digital radio who can't see what we can see. So littlerow.org. Okay. I would commend that website to listeners. I said it was thoroughly useful, and links to the other website which you mentioned in the network. And just talk about your networks. You, Marcy, did you say earlier on? Just so clear.
Oh, cool. Yes, not a problem. So you've got the Kairos generation. He has the Little Row initiative, of which I am the project director. But I am also an ambassador for Survivors' Voices, which they are all survivors. And it's about going out and raising the profile on that. So, for example, I spoke before the Church of England Synod on childhood sexual assault and how it should be managed. And it was a very positive result because we ended up not only with them 100% accepting the recommendations of the ICSA report, but also the recommendations that we put before them to go beyond what the report was offering. Then the other organisation that I am the advocate lead for is Traumascapes. And with Traumascapes, we believe in changing the way that trauma is managed right around the world. And when we speak to trauma, we speak to all the traumas. They need to be reimagined. We need to bring lived experience to mental health caring. And that's very important. It switches us straight back to Little Row, because we need to look at this particularly for what it takes to heal adult victim survivors within BIPOC, Black, Indigenous and people of colour communities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a very clear response. The useful was if you could give us some stats, give us some idea of the scale of the problems or the issues. I use the general term abuse. You might want to break it down, but just give us some idea of the scale of the issue, the problem that pervades our families, our communities.
So they say that it's 1 in 6 boys who were sexually abused and 1 in 4 girls. Cool. The argument is that it is usually a male perpetrator. That is true, but I've got to make it very clear here. Women are also perpetrators. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it isn't a one-way street. And I think I must underline, and you'll hear me say this throughout the interview, we live with a toxic masculinity. So we think it's a badge of honor when a boy child sleeps with a woman, has sex with a woman who is older. It's not a badge of honor. It's damaging. And they should go to jail. The women, not the boys. Mm. It's wrong. It doesn't matter who is perpetrating the act. So all children, boys and girls, doesn't matter, ought to live a life that is free of abuse. What makes this even more frightening is 70% of the abusers are actually from within the family circle. In fact, it was only yesterday I was at a meeting where somebody was arguing it's 90%. What I am confident about is doing this work on the ground, speaking to the expert, being involved in research. I don't believe it's 1 in 4, and I don't believe it's 1 in 6. I think the figure is actually a lot higher than that. But for obvious reasons, people don't come forward, especially from BIPOC communities.
Ooh. So you used an interesting term there, BIPOC.
Black, Indigenous, and people of colour.
Oh,
We're not, yeah, I don't say, I think some people say BAME, Black, minority ethnic, considering we are the world majority. I can't see myself as a minority ethnic, but I am Black or Indigenous or a person of colour.
I won't pursue that one for a moment, but that's interesting terminology, interesting acronym, which I need to increase my familiarity with, but that's okay. But the figures you're quoting are horrifying. If this were a, if it been not referred to abuse, or particularly sexual abuse, if it was referred to it being a coronavirus, the entire country would have been closed down by now, because, you know, can you imagine billions to be spent by the pharmaceutical companies and by governments to address the issue, because that's a pandemic, of enormous proportions, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. But it's also a £1 billion industry.
Oh, explain.
Well, if you think about child pornography, if you think about the way the imagery of children is sold, then there is money behind it. We still have very much this trope in society: children must be seen and not heard, children not believed, somebody is a bad child. Mm-hmm. We haven't actually looked at causes and effects behind the behaviours. And one of the big things we have is there's a whole industry here. You know, there were 2 MPs, I think one's been charged with rape, but he's still in the House of Commons, and the other one was a convicted paedophile, and he was in the House of Commons. And it wasn't that the Conservative Party knew. But I don't want to focus too much on MPs, because it takes away from the reality, which is 70% of this happens within the family home circle, and 48% happens when the sibling sexually abuses another sibling. Oh. We have a very focused problem within the family. And then if you want to step outside of that, depending on where you see the church, we have a problem with pastors who abuse young members and church elders who abuse members of the congregation, young members as well as older members. But our focus here is the child sexual abuse, because as the adult grows up, they haven't healed, and that becomes a generational trauma, which plays out in a variety of symptoms that we look at as a society and we criticise. So we criticise obesity. One of the things associated with childhood sexual assault is obesity. Yeah. We look at alcoholism. You know where I'm going to go with this, right? One of the things associated with childhood sexual assault is alcoholism, gambling, drugs, self-harm. And these are looked at as the problems. They're not, they're symptomatic. So littleroad.org, along with our partner Survivors Voices with King's College, are looking at a massive project at the end of this year, where we're going to be looking at pathways to healing, allowing people not to see the symptoms, but to look at the root causes. How do we get the help and the healing to the people that need it, for the real problem, for the root of the problem, and not how it shows itself up symptomatically?
I'm going to come back to that, I think, as that part of the interview on the healing side. If I may, you've quoted these broad figures, specifically in relation to the Black or African continental African Caribbean communities. Do you have figures specifically for our community in terms of its prevalence, levels of abuse, sexual, verbal, physical, otherwise abuse? Do you have those type of figures?
They are almost identical to those for the wider community. Mm-hmm. And herein lies the problem. None of the figures are accurate, I believe, and this is anecdotal, I believe they're higher. We have been blessed with the work of Professor Claudette Bernard from Goldsmiths University, who has looked into some of this work for us. She's worked on this for years, written some excellent books. So just look her up and go and buy whatever she's written. It's good stuff, I promise you. And we find that we are underrepresented in terms of the healing element, because we don't talk about it in our communities. Therefore, the healing doesn't get done.
So the stats, the evidence-based, of course, you said they were roughly the same. So presumably, the professor and others have reasonably good figures for our community. But I'm conscious that my shows are specifically aimed at members of my own community. These are empowerment programs. So I know that we are very keen to understand levels of prevalence of this type of abuse in our families, and to be able to validate these figures. Because whilst I recognize the cases which I've encountered, you're right, because we don't talk about it enough. The figures must be quite difficult for you to obtain, one presumes.
No, because all these things are usually done on the sampling frame. Sampling frames, as you know, are quite accurate. So when you had the ICSA, the Child Inquiry into Childhood Sexual Abuse, there was an arm of that set up specifically for Black people, and Black representatives went in number and were able to speak about it. There were other groups like littlerow.org who have meetings with people who are of Black descent, and they are able to feed figures in as well. But like everything, some people don't want the figures recorded. We are afraid, understandably, but we can be afraid of data and where the information goes. So it's not spoken about enough. You see, the average age for disclosure is 52. So most people at 52 or over, they then break and have to speak about it. And they might speak about it in a church setting. They might speak about it to a friend. So you have to find ways to go out and get the information. But the more you have groups like ours, then the more people are able to come forward and talk about it. One of the things that's important for me is I've actually been trying to get somebody to sponsor me to do my PhD, to do my research specifically in this area. Everybody agrees the research is needed, but I haven't got a taker as yet. But it's actually where I want to do in-depth research. Oh,
you never know. We might, for this show, enable that to happen. Yes. Because it seems pretty fundamental, we may say so, that we should do our own research and validate our work ourselves, and then share with ourselves and wider communities.
Well, the idea behind it is not so much a case of validation. We know the problem exists, but we know the help isn't there. Why are we not accessing the services? And when the services are accessed, the people going for help are not getting the help they need, because we don't have the right representatives, because we don't have our story to tell, because we don't have the research behind it. So what will work for one particular group won't necessarily work for BIPOC people. Remember, as Black people, we're not coming with a trauma, we're coming with traumas. Yep. Real traumas.
Yes.
So you have the whole issue of race, you have the whole issue of culture, you have the whole issue of Afrophobia, then there's the sexism that's attached to it, then there's the hair that's attached to it, then there's the colorism that's attached to it, on top of which you have the abuse which happens as a child, and it actually affects the way that the front cortex of the brain grows and develops. And the same true for the limbic, which is the bit in the middle, the way that forms and develops. So it affects our relationships, it affects our intimate relationships, it affects our relationships with our children, that trauma gets passed on, but we can't start to untangle this scribble until we start to understand where it is, how it happens,
Right. Okay.
and the right paths for healing.
Yes. And if I may, then, I'm just kind of conscious of time, so I'm going to just kind of move us forward. I want to use the themes, taglines on the website. You said not your website, but I associate it with yourself at the moment, so there you are. Okay. Help, hope, healing, the 3 H's. So let's look at the help first of all, and just look at the what help is available. Okay. If someone's listening to this show at the moment, where can they find help?
Depends on the help they need. So let's break it down. I believe that the most powerful form of healing for anybody is through one's own experience and speaking to other people who have survived the experience. Therefore, I'm a big supporter of peer support groups. And of course, littlerow.org runs peer support groups. No surprise there. Then there is...
Before you move on, so the health support groups, their details on the website?
You go to the website and Survivors Pod is up there, and you just email Survivors Pod, and then you will get a call from one of us who will then take you through the form and send you the rules that we need to hold in order for you to join. So we'll go through that with you. So that's everything is on the website. Basically, contact Little Row. And in terms of peer support, we are there to sort you out. The other thing that's coming is a BIPOC support group just for this in South London at the end of June.
Oh, quite soon.
Yes. So we're going to have one of those. So it's an in-person meeting. Then we actually train facilitators. We had a wonderful weekend at the beginning of May. Oh, it was so powerful.
Share.
Black women in a room, and we were talking about trauma and how it affects us. And everybody left on a higher plane. I was one of the facilitators, but everybody left on a higher plane, and almost without exception, everybody wanted to be a facilitator, which is beautiful because it means we can set up more groups for more people to join. So that's the other thing that we do.
Are you doing anything in Southwark by chance? I just asked in passing.
We can sort that out.
Right.
We've got a huge festival that I am working on with the team. I'm not alone, and the idea there is it's called Hurt and Healing, and I want to put that on at the end of the year. So I will be looking at you for venues and financial support, and that's about how Black people hurt and how we heal. I mean, I'm really excited about that. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be so good. It's going to be so good on this. It's just going to be brilliant.
The conference you just referred to, which you're all left with a high, is there a report centered around that conference? Did you sort of detail the conference purpose and the outcomes? Is there a report available, maybe?
Sorry, which one? The facilitator training? Right, the facilitator training we have to do the report for because we were funded. So it was a weekend away. We got funding for it. So myself and Survivors Voices, we worked together on this. We got funding to go away for the weekend and train facilitators to set up peer support groups so that we can move towards help and healing. So the big person around this is Dr. Angela Sweeney. And Dr. Angela Sweeney swears by, and quite rightfully, lived experience and how important it is in our healing journey. So we get together and we train people to be facilitators. We give them some guidance around being trauma-informed, very important, how to facilitate, how to keep themselves safe, because there is a trauma that's vicarious. So I can vicariously take on board somebody's trauma, as indeed you can, or anybody can. So we do training around that, how to set up the groups, how people meet, what the rules are. Yeah. And when the report is out, Martin, I'm more than happy to send it to you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Many councillors, MPs and others and local authority officials I know would love to read that report. And I'm sure, I'm not speaking out of turn, what you're describing, I'm sure we'd want to replicate across many of the London boroughs, counties and other places as well. We need more of this. There's no doubt. I'm completely convinced of that.
Well, I'm off to Barbados to see if I can set it up over there as well, because my keynote speeches that I do, I've actually done to organisations in the Windies, and again, it's something that they are trying to tackle in the West Indies. It's a huge shift, but they are working so hard to actually make this a priority and deal with it. And my parents are the Caribbean, so it's important for me to see what's happening over there. And we have really great learning and modelling over here. So I want to see if we can shift it over there and make a difference.
Thank you. I'm going to get on to hope in a moment, but before I get into hope, I did want to ask, have you experienced resistance, either from our community, officialdom, or indeed the corporate world? Have you experienced resistance to wanting to discuss or indeed tackle these issues?
Absolutely. The resistance is powerful and it's there. I do believe it was Mr. Prime Minister himself who said it was spaffing money up the wall to investigate childhood sexual assault because it's historical. It is never historical and it's not spaffing money up the wall. Then, of course, there are people who don't want to believe it, perhaps because it's so ugly. Their disbelief is such that and they don't want to touch it. But, you know, it was Malcolm X that says, you know, you're doing right when people get upset with you, right? So, you know, people get upset with me, but I keep going. So, you know, this is a real problem. And, you know, we got great people like Tarana Burke in the United States of America, Joy T. Riley, who I've done an interview with. God, she's on point. Made a film about it. She's filming in the Windies at the moment. So there are voices, there are Black people out there. Oh, a film. Recently, there's a film that's come out and it's about abuse. And there's this Black man who stands up and he talks about the fact he was sexually abused by a woman. And that film, I don't want to talk too much about it. I'm going to talk a lot about it, but I can't because I want it to be part of the exhibition that we are going to hold towards the end of the year. It was on at Streatham Odeon not so long ago, but it's absolutely brilliant. This film where he interviews 6 Black men. They talk about their trauma, they talk about their journeys, and he does this wonderful part on his own sexual abuse, which he didn't acknowledge.
Yeah.
Because people don't. It's difficult. The other thing you see that's difficult about this is the victim survivor feels ashamed.
Right. Yeah, I know. I've come across this. Yeah.
Very much. So they feel they've done something wrong. Oh, I've got a whole speech around this, actually. I've got to do it for somebody. But when you have shame and blame, and that turns inwards, you get a wall of silence.
Yes.
And that's something that the victim survivor has to deal with. Then we got things like when you talk about a victim, you're a victim, very negative connotations to the fact that somebody has done something to you. Then you've got the family. Then you've got the fact that you're Black, you don't want to go to white authorities because when you do, and this has happened, so what I'm about to quote is factually correct. You have examples where they turn around and say, well, that's what you do in your culture, or that's how you people are. Yeah.
You showed me that, you give me the name of that official who said that. And that
if you read the ICSA report, it's right in there. So there is, the ICSA report did a section on BIPOC communities, and when they looked at the Black community, that's some of the feedback you've got. And from my personal experience, talking to people and being a facilitator in these groups, I've heard that story.
Well,
not just from the police, from the therapists as well. And that's why it's important that we have Black therapists. We need Black therapists.
Well, I've got to say, as an elected official, if I heard such statements from a person within the authority that I represent, that's a red flag. When I use the term red flag, I mean, that's it. That's a red flag, because such attitudes are clearly wrong, and such attitudes should not be allowed to pervade our public services. So I'm pointing to the help me, because I know there are many out there who want help, and you can't gain help if there are attitudes that pervade our public services that withhold the professional help that person deserves. That person should not be working in our public services. I give note, should not be working in our public services. I know there are councillors and MPs listening to this. They should not be working in our public services, and we identify them. We should use our officers to ensure such persons that either go on intensive training or they no longer are able to carry out the roles and the professional roles that they're employed. I don't mind saying that in public without any shadow of a doubt. Such persons should not be working in our public services. I'm not paying my taxes for it.
But there's a need, isn't there, for programs like my Rethink Renew Reform program, which goes into public services to actually change these attitudes. And you need more of that sort of service delivered by Black people. So I'm not saying it's not happening, it is, but I'm always mindful of these courses. Mine's called Rethink Renew Reform Anti-Racist Ally. Other people have the same sort of thing, but they go in, and this is what I'm talking about missing critical parts of the dialogue. You have to be culturally competent to do it. By the way, just because you're Black doesn't make you culturally competent. Let me just drop that in. But you need to be culturally competent to do it, because this spreads across the services. It doesn't matter which one you're talking about. Doctors, schools, NHS, police.
I agree. It has been my experience as well in the education sector. Let me, if I may, I realise the sequence here is help, hope, healing. Well, I want to address healing next, if you don't mind.
I thought we were addressing healing, but I will continue.
Well, you are. I was really focused on healing, on the, and I would have. You talk about people healing us. What can we do to heal ourselves?
Nobody can heal us. Healing has to be internal. It's all part of paideia, and I'm huge on paideia. The necessity of one going in order to go out. You know, as a young person, yes, I'm past the first rushes of youth. I used to go out to find myself. Now I'm walking backwards. I'm walking in to myself. So we need to root ourselves in good soil that's our own. So first thing, we have to acknowledge that the hurt has happened. The most difficult thing is healing. Healing hurts. You have to live in pain.
Sorry, Roz, say that again, because it's really important for our audience to have heard what you said very clearly. Healing what?
Healing hurts. It's very painful. But to get your best life, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself. Otherwise, we remain unbalanced. And we're blessed because our neural pathways, which are the brain parts that are damaged, that don't form, are like plastic. They actually stretch and grow and renew. So these are things that you can do to make your life better, but it is a painful process. So one has to look inward. One has to find support in peer support groups, in a therapist, and we don't always believe in therapists. One has to have faith. Now, I said faith, I didn't say religion, but you have to have faith to heal. Whether you read Whitfield, who's an authority on childhood sexual assaults and trauma. You need faith to heal. You have to understand that there's something bigger than you. And there must be, because we are designed to have neuroplasticity, which is the growth, the regrowing of parts of the brain. So there is something bigger, and you have to have faith to heal. I think you also need community. And this is where peer support comes in, that's so important. You can have a better understanding of what's happened to you when you realize actually you're not alone, nor are you to blame, and it's okay to be angry. And then there is the living with the feelings. And for this, I go to Rumi. Rumi wrote this wonderful poem. He is an old Persian poet going back thousands of years. It's called The Guest House. And he says he welcomes happiness and he welcomes joy, but he welcomes sadness and he welcomes anger. We have to welcome all of our emotions to heal. And it's great when those emotions can be shared in a group with other people. So it's very much something one has to do for oneself. Your therapist isn't going to heal you if they're not the right therapist for you. So you have to have a responsibility and say, you're not the therapist for me, and find another therapist. Yeah. Your healing has to be very much centered on the individual empowering themselves. And it's not about forgiveness. Now, this is a personal opinion, and there are people who will disagree with me, because forgiveness is seen, isn't it, as the panacea to all ills. Just forgive and you will be better. No, I don't buy that at all. I think in order to forgive, you need to blame. How can I forgive myself if I'm not to blame? How does that work? Who came out with this stuff? So I think it's important that you have the journey inward in order to find out what you need and build your resilience, build your self-love, which is the key to resilience. Find peer support groups, talk about it, and don't hold on to these emotions. Don't be a strong Black woman, and please don't be a strong Black man. Baal. If you need to cry, cry. I don't buy all those tropes are poisonous. Get rid of them. There's a reason the divine gave us the emotions and gave us the tears. Can we use the tools that the divine gave us and not worry with these tropes that run around society?
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I can't even reply to you. You're right. You know, strong Black man, strong Black woman means that you don't cry, you have no emotions. Stupidness. I've always considered to be stupidness, and my life has proven it is stupidness. We can do better. We definitely can do better. Wow, that's remarkable. It's your delivery that is effective. Hope, of course, I'm envisaging what happens when you find the balance and you've grown beyond the early trauma. What's it look like? What's it look like?
Hope is that place where the individual, and remember, this is my personal opinion on hope. It looks different for other people, I'm absolutely sure. But it's that place where you say no to the things that were otherwise entrapping you. No to the alcohol, no to gambling. It might only be for one day that you get over it, but you know what? That day you hoped you did well. Tomorrow it will be 2 days. You might slip back for a week, but the next week it might be 3 days. Hope is continuing. As I speak to you, Martin, there are millions, I didn't say hundreds, I didn't say thousands, millions of people that are taking their lives. Suicide rate around the world is enormous. And people take themselves out because I think they lack hope. When you have organizations like Little Road, when we have conversations like this to raise awareness, when you see people like Oprah Winfrey, you realize there is hope. Yeah. Or Ivana and Van Zandt, I always get her name wrong. Or the late, great Maya Angelou, and I'll probably reference them again, or Tamara Burke. There's hope.
A few men? Can you quote a few men? It'd be nice. Help the men here, you see.
Well, there's my Tyler Perry. He was sexually abused when he was young. Yeah. Chris Brown. I like Chris Brown. Don't complain about Chris. So he was abused. And it's important that we know we can get through this. Whatever your trauma, you can get through it. In fact, one of my favorite people, Gabor Mate, he says there's wisdom in trauma. I'm trying to come to terms with that, right? I'm trying. I haven't got there yet, but he is a great man and he's done a lot of good work. So I'm trying to work through there's wisdom in trauma. To be honest, who would we be if not for some of the traumas in our life? So don't get me wrong, there is a grieving in trauma, recognizing that you've been deprived of things, you've been deprived of opportunity, potential, what you could have been. But there's also something to be said for it being part of you, who you are, and taking you along the path to where you are now. Never forget, there are not hundreds, not thousands, but millions that take their lives. They literally take themselves out because they have no hope. The fact that you've made it to today, thank you, divine. Hug yourself.
Yeah.
Hug yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I said, it's because of the more recent experiences I had, why this program is essential. That's why the help me is so important, the help me, but it's knowing where to go for help. Yeah? And I could often refer people, in my case, to social care and so on. I could do that, but for the reasons which we've elucidated earlier on, I'm not always comfortable with that. There has to be an intermediary step before you go to social care. We really need to, and fair enough. But Little Row, I've found to be an interesting resource. So the pod, so you refer to them as being the, what do you call them, the pod?
Survivors Pod.
Survivors Pod.
Survivors Pod, yeah, we're poddies. So it's we just love the name.
About it, but it's such a serious matter because someone contacting the Survivors Pod because they really want help. Okay, but they're also seeking to help others as well. Often, I find it's usually quite remarkable. Those who need help also want to help others. They sense that it's they're not actually by themselves. There are others going through similar experiences.
There is, and that's a beautiful thing. But I have a huge question mark over this, and not everybody will agree with me. Remember, this is my opinion. How are you helping anybody, and you're not on a healing journey? And this is actually a real problem. Stop with the helping and start with the healing, then you can do the helping. I've met many people who are eager and keen to help, and what they're doing is they're not dealing with their own issues, and then they will transfer that onto somebody else. And that's why we have facilitator training. Not everybody who passes through the training is ready to be a facilitator. Not everybody who's a therapist is ready to be a therapist. There's something about having the academic paperwork and actually being able to dispense and support. Now, that doesn't mean to say you have to be healed. You can be going through your healing journey, but you have to be in a certain place in order to help other people, especially when you speak to people who are of African descent. The layers of trauma are complex.
Yes. And indeed, and I said that it starts with self, but for the reason which you just said, these are usually complex matters, which you'd be better off speaking to someone who's well trained, because once you take off the scab over the wound is still there. The wound is there.
It is, but there is the therapist end, and there is the growing body. It's called MAD studies, right? Which is about lived experience. Lived experience is important because what's happened is people without experience are telling other people how they should do something. So this is the importance of peer support, because in peer support, you are actually helping yourselves. You're in a group of people, but the essence of it is you are helping yourself, because you're speaking not into a void, not into a paid service, but to other people who understand. So you might start off the conversation with, I was beaten as a child, and end up with, I was sexually abused as a child.
Yes.
And not being judged on it. And it's really important that we look at judgment, And then you've gone, and this is something I've heard, but it doesn't identify anybody, where colorism, this child felt excluded and picked upon based on their color. They were the darker child. And here's the interesting thing, they were the child that was sexually abused.
That's my case.
Sometimes the person who is sexually abused stays in the abuse to protect the siblings behind. There's all sorts of permutations that happen, and peer support allows a wide body of support for those circumstances. That doesn't mean to say we don't need talk therapy and therapists who do things like clay therapy. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier is with Traumascapes, we know that there is a huge value in the arts, hence the big exhibition at the end of the year. Art is really important to a healing journey. So there's simple things that people can do, such as journaling, massively important in terms of self-development and self-healing. Journaling, write it down. Sometimes it's a symbolic action.
For a moment, and I'll let you continue a second. I'm going to open the phone lines now. So I just realized the time. So here you go. Open the phone lines, and the number to call if you wish to interact with Roz on this most sensitive subject. And I understand the sensitivity, but it's really good to get a few calls. People really just...
Martin, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to sign for a parcel at the door. You didn't hear them, not I did. So whilst you do that, I will be here. I've just got to sign for a parcel.
Go sign for it. Let me go out the telephone number. So number to call, those of you who want to interact with Roz and myself on this subject, a really important subject, which is really impacting our community. We do not speak about it enough, but it's an insidious subject which is affecting our communities in not beneficial ways. But let's talk about the issue. The number to call, it's 0208 133 5616. I repeat, the number to call, it's 0208 133 5616. And if you are viewing us via YouTube or Facebook, the number should be on screen at the moment. We welcome your calls. I know it's a sensitive subject, but it's one that we do need to discuss, and we discuss it openly and honestly. You know, we have the opportunity to begin to address the issue head on. It's a vital subject for our discussions because its prevalence within the community is simply too high. If it were not called abuse, but called the coronavirus, you know, as I said earlier on, the entire country would be locked down, and a therapist would be going from house to house in order to address the issues. It is that critical. It is that critical. Honestly, I know it's difficult to discuss, but please, we welcome your feedback. And if you don't have to be going through the trauma yourself. You may know someone or simply want to help. We welcome it. It's our first call. Good morning. Good morning, caller. Can you hear us? Good morning, caller. Oh, good morning, caller. Can you hear us? Adjust my volumes. Caller with number ending 9749. Can you hear us, caller? Well, okay. Not sure why you can't hear us. Good morning, caller. Okay, I can't see any blocks on my system. Caller, can you hear us? Good morning, caller. Number ending 9749. No, I can't hear you. I wonder if there's a system problem. Caller, we can't hear you. If you want to put the phone down and retry, let's see if we can hear you if you try again. Caller, hopefully you heard that. Okay, sorry about it, Roz. As far as I'm aware, the system. Oh, there we go. Let's try it again. Oh, good morning,
Hello.
caller. Good morning. Good morning. We can hear you this time.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm the caller number ending 9749.
Excellent. Thank you for calling. Can I have your name and
Hi
where you're
there.
calling from, please?
Monmore.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you have a question for Roz?
I wouldn't say a question. It's more of a statement.
Okay.
I am so pleased that this subject is being spoken about because it's been brushed under the carpet for eons.
Yeah.
And I'm of a Caribbean background. I'm of Jamaican heritage.
Okay.
And born in England, but have always revisited the country, actually lived in the country as a child and then returned to the UK. And unfortunately, it's very rife there. But what astonishes or has surprised and shocked me over the years is, number one, the prevalence. Yeah. And two, how desperate families are to hide it. And so people walk around with these marks. And I had the privilege back in my days, my career days, of being a cosmetologist. So that's the hairdressing world. Okay. And most people who are in that profession are aware that we're actually acne on. And it was amazing.
Interesting.
Information that would be shared. And one way that I found that a lot of ladies coped with their situation was to have their hair done. It was amazing. It had very positive mental impact upon them. Okay. But again, I honestly lift my hat to the lady Roz that's bringing this to the forefront. She's such an eloquent speaker as well.
She is.
And I think as a community, it would be fantastic for us to get together and aid in her completing her doctorate, with this project. Because not only will it enlighten everyone, it should bring it to the broader world, because this isn't only happening here in England, amongst our diaspora.
Can I ask you just to pause for a moment there, Corda? Corda, can you hold just a moment there? You made a series of really interesting points. And before you go, I just want to ask Roz to respond to some of what you've said. A hairdresser, it's an interesting observation, I think. And of course... And barbers. Of course.
I think barbers would be very similar as well.
I'm just going to get some Roz's response. I'm going to get Roz's response to what you've said, because that's you've made a really series of interesting responses. Let's listen on. Roz, yeah.
First of all, I really appreciate the call and the information that hairdressers were one of the hubs for speaking about this. And I understand that. It's innocent contact, isn't it? It's a place where you can go, where you feel safe amongst a group of women or men, in terms of barbers like yourself, where you have a safety with personal touch. How intimate is it to have one's hair touched? You know how upset we get when people put their hands in our hair. So when you are with a style designer, when you're in a salon, you have an intimate experience where you feel at home and trusted in the environment in which you're in. So I'd like to thank the caller for the work that she's done, and to say that the ultimate dream for Little Row is to have a house of help, hope and healing. And one of the things that I now am going to add on the list is, can we have somebody who does hair in there? Because I want a therapist in there. I want massage people in there. And I also want people who do hair in there now. So thank you for your call. You've just added to my list.
And before I go, could I just ask... of course. For Roz's details again, please, because I'd quite like to make contact with you.
Wonderful. Now,
directly.
That's okay. Roz, she's asking for your contact details. Would it be through Little Row or you?
Yeah. So if she emails support@littlerow.org, or go to the website Little Row, LITTLERO.org, hit the contact form, and it will come through to me.
Okay.
And and especially if you want to do some work with us, because we love a volunteer.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is needed.
Yeah, it is needed.
This is survival. Yeah. Sorry, could you just repeat that? So contact at Little Row.
At littlerow.org.
Yeah, so it's little.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
Oh, sorry. So it's little row, little and then RO .org, O-R-G.
.org.
That's right. Yeah. Once you're on that website, you'll see contact, and you'll be able to email Roz directly. Okay.
Excellent. Sorry, what's your name, Mr. Presenter? I didn't catch your name.
Oh, well, I'm the motivator. I am the motivator. There you are. I've got your details here. So what I'm going to do, because you've also mentioned that you'd like to give support to Roz, as I would like to give support to her, so she can pursue the PhD research paper.
Yes, I think that would be fantastic.
Yes, I think you and I, and I'm sure a few others, would want to give her whatever support she needs, with financial or whatever she needs. She hasn't yet told us exactly what she needs in order to do this. But I think I've just made an executive decision, caller. I'm going to invite Roz back again in a month or two's time, because she definitely has a lot to offer us, and we can tackle other issues. I think of race. I think will be a really interesting issue for us to tackle with her. But I suspect a research paper produced by Roz Tawaria, get that right, would be a research paper that you and I would want to refer to when we're speaking about ourselves in other community settings. And I suspect such a paper we will give the paper authority. Okay, I mean, that's what I think we should achieve. Caller, thank you for the call.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the call, and I'll be in touch with you. Take care. Thank you for the call.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Well, there you are, Roz. You've inspired one caller already. There you are. I know there are a few others. I've received a few texts here, trying to encourage them to call in themselves. Be nice, but anyway, they like texts. So I've got a text here from, I think it is a gentleman, and he's asked a question. Can your presenter explain boys? If it's the abuse for boys tend to be, is it physical, emotional, or sexual in the main? Interesting.
Boys are sexually abused just as girls are sexually abused. And the thing about when somebody is sexually assaulted as a child, whether you're a boy or whether you're a girl, it's also an emotional abuse. It plays with you psychologically. It physically changes the shape of your brain. What frustrates me is that when we speak about this, we speak about it as a male perpetrated crime. It is. More men commit this than women, but women commit the act too. And this is where I speak to toxic masculinity. It's seen as a badge of honor somehow that a little boy is interfered with by an adult woman. It messes him up as he goes into manhood. There's nothing honorable about it. So boys are mentally affected just like girls are, with the psychological abuse that follows, the misunderstanding of adult relationships. And it's why I call for a change in sex education. And that's something, Martin, that I get a lot of pushback on, because they say, why do you want to have children sexually educated? Because we've got millions of children who are sexually abused and they don't know they were sexually abused. And by the time they recognize it, it's late. Whereas when we educate them, we empower them to say no and to speak to people. It's really important. That's why it's so important that we have these support groups, so that children can go. You see, often, and this is the complication of being Black, we feel that we are betraying our cultures.
Explain that.
We go to authorities.
Explain that to us, because that's an important observation, please.
So a Black woman was sexually abused. She becomes an adult. Most people, not everybody, but the statistics say that 70% of people who are sexually abused end up in domestically violent and abusive relationships. Black women don't call the police because they feel Black men have a hard time. Therefore, they feel it's a cultural betrayal. But they also feel betrayed by people who have the same experience of oppression who oppress them. So it leaves them in the vortex. And the same is true whether you're a man or a woman. Once you're coming from the BIPOC, then you have this same feeling you're betraying the community.
Wow.
So we don't talk about it. Then we are ignored. So everybody's heard, I think, about what happened in Rochdale, in the care homes. What you don't hear was, yes, the majority were white girls, but there were also Black and Asian girls who were sexually abused. If you read the report, Black and Asian girls who were in homes were sexually abused, but we don't talk about it. And I raise that because, again, it's this idea of shame or cultural betrayal. So it's not spoken about. A blind eye is turned to it. So our boys, even in the hip hop world, if you literally tap into Google hip hop sexual abuse, you'll find there are allegations against some of the biggest hip hop companies, stars, artists interfering, sexually abusing the boys, asking things of them that's unacceptable. No child, male or female, should be placed in that position. None.
So why is it, if I may ask you, because it's interesting, because it's difficult to disagree with what you've described. You've said that sexual abuse of boys and girls are roughly the same in families in terms of the numbers of instances. And it's interesting.
No, I'm not saying there's numbers the same.
Okay.
Girls are abused at a higher rate than boys.
Right. Okay.
But it's important that we recognise that boys are abused, because the abuse of boys is identified in terms of toxic masculinity. It's seen as a badge of honour. It is not a badge of honour. It's wrong. Male mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters abusing children should go to jail. End of. I don't even have a doubt about it in my mind. So our boys are also at risk, but we don't talk about it in the same terms, because we say, oh, he was with an older woman. No, it's wrong. End of. It's wrong.
We're definitely having you back again here, Ross, if you don't mind.
My pleasure, Martin.
Can I just be clear then? I wanted to, in the last few minutes, just discuss ethnicity and race and your training in that regard. But I'm very sensitive that here in Southwark, that we've made real stride, I believe, in the Southwark Stand Together. You may have heard of this, yeah? Made real stride in rooting out racism in every part of life here in the London Borough of Southwark. Really proud of the work we're engaged in and will continue to be engaged in. But I know you have a particular specialism in this, in training staff in anti-racist behaviour and so on. Tell us a little bit about that, maybe last 2 or 3 minutes. Just tell us a little bit about your work in that regard.
So in order for us to be accepted and integrated, not annihilated, not absorbed, we don't want absorption, but to be accepted, we need, as Black people, to tell our story in a culturally competent way so that people are culturally humble about what we bring to the table. So I've come up with Rethink, Renew, Reform, which is delivered by lived experience practitioners.
Say that again, you say too quickly.
I'm sorry.
Say it again, say again.
So I've come up with a course called Rethink, Renew, Reform,
yep.
Anti-Racist Allies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's delivered by race practitioners with lived experience,
yep.
who are culturally competent,
yep.
and who are trauma informed. We are unique in that way. And we are a majority Black business. So what we do is we go into organizations and we express microaggressions,
mm-hmm.
the history, the way the bias works, because the bias isn't subconscious, it becomes subconscious, but the bias is quite overt. So let me give you a working example of that. We talk to freedom of expression in this country, yet Priti Patel and Boris Johnson were anti people taking the knee.
Indeed, indeed.
So on the one hand, we're saying, yeah, we're all fine. On the other hand, we actually have key figures who are saying, well, no, you can't do that, or who are frowning on it. And when you see the racist slogans, when you see what happened at the football, when you see how Black people are treated, you know that we're not hitting the core of the matter. So it's for businesses to actually say they're not just taking Black money and Black culture. And those of you who've seen my cool kudos talk know how important we are to the culture of a country, but we need to get people on side to talk about how do they become not bystanders of racism, but upstanders when they see racism. And that's what we think Renew Reform does, because we have to rethink the process, renew what we do, then reform. So we go in and we do that with members of staff by showing them historically how we got to where we are. Then we show how microaggressions work. And a very large, small microaggression is actually microaggressions. It was created by a Black man at Harvard University. But we talk about it as if it came from thin air. Well, we don't do that with Rethink, Renew, Reform. We never say microaggressions without saying this Black man that went to Harvard, and we name him. And the same with intersectionality. The word has now become popular, because I used to say I'm an intersectional feminist, I'm a hood feminist now. But it was actually Professor Crenshaw. No, I don't want to give away too much of the content. But again, this is work that Black people have done to make strides to move forward. Lots of this gets lost in terms of people delivering and talking about race. I hear so many people telling me that it takes a village. Actually, it's an African proverb, so that falls off. You talk about Einstein's theory of relativity. You don't say the theory of relativity, do you? Yeah. You say it's a Chinese proverb, that. So it's an African proverb. It takes a village. Absolutely. And it's that acknowledgement that makes our course so much different, because there are microaggressions when these courses are being delivered, where people are talking about microaggressions. But I think we can change that by giving voice to the power of what the African peoples have brought to the world. And just to finish on this point, I come from the blues people.
Explain.
And let me tell you something about the blues people. We've taught the world how to love, because nowhere have I seen such hate and loathing being received and not being pushed back with hatred and violence. So we are the blues people. We're the people of the blues music. Hey. Oh my God, we've taught them how to love.
I tell you. What a wonderful way to end the interview. What a wonderful way. Oh, and you're still glowing. Oh, oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you. That was a real pleasure. And I know you've affected a number of people out there. We expected the resistance to cool, and that's fair enough. This is a recording. It's available on YouTube under the Motivator show, okay? And I know it will receive many views. Roz, I'd like to cordially invite you back. We need to talk about race and how you deliver those courses. I'm very interested in that, because if we are to transform society, we have to be the change makers, okay? Therefore, we develop those competencies through our lived experiences so we can affect others through our words, through our actions, okay?
Absolutely.
That's why I do these shows. And I have to tell you, this year I've devoted to primarily women contributors to give recognition to the contribution, enormous contribution women make to the development and evolution of our communities, you know, because women are often able to talk about ourselves, no problem, but we need to talk about women far more, and women in a respectful manner, as equals in this current war against oppression and racism, those things that denigrate the human spirit, you know.
You know, I have a problem with racism, right? You know, for me, is Afrophobia.
So, I agree. I'm going to use the term, I do use the term interchangeably at times, but I'm conscious of the wider audience, but we will take them on this journey, which is why I'm going to have you come back again. We'll take them on the journey, okay? Wow, that has been a wonderful experience. I'm almost out of time now. I would say this to you, that if you continue on this path, we get you back here again, because there are many lessons that many of us will draw from these exchanges, okay? And I'm very conscious that these issues are very deep. I say deep. We've created a taboo around discussing these issues in public. Okay, and this issue of shaming and trying to avoid, recrimination from others is a big one in our community. But we've got to become far more courageous. I say to my community, we've got to become far more courageous if we are to create a better world for our children, indeed, our children's children. We've got to become courageous. So I commend Ros Eto'ower to you all, okay? I commend her and the work that she's involved in. I would encourage listeners to go to your website, littlerow.org. It is information rich, and the link websites are also information rich. And if you've got any doubt, I say to those who will listen to this, seek professional advice. Seek professional advice. Ros, thank you very much for being an outstanding guest on my show today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And keep glowing. Oh, blimey, that's a lovely glow. And that smile. Oh, I have to smile with you because it's infectious. And long may that continue. May we continue to do that to each other. My blessings to you. Long may you continue. Long may you continue. Bye-bye. 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 And my guest has gone, but I've got to say that was truly informative and truly empowering experience. And we need more of them. We need more. We'll get her back in again with slightly different focus on the program. But the issue of abuse in our families, we've got to tackle, because the long-term damage to our community is evident. The abuse is debilitating to the young person, debilitating for their adulthood. It's debilitating for our economic revival. It's debilitating in our cultural revival. It's simply debilitating. And indeed, I've got to say, it is for those who engage in such behavior, you need help, and be courageous enough to seek out the help. I know abusing a child, girl or boy, may satisfy you in the moment, but the long-term impact on that child is profound. Anyway, I'm hopeful for the future. I'm hopeful because we have people like Ros and others, Forward UK, what I mentioned earlier on, organizations such as that, who've demonstrated a determination to succeed. I say again, success is ours for the taking. Until next strong, I am the Motivator, where we translate our words into action. I now hand over to the next presenter. I'm not sure if it's Empress Janice or Sister Sanra. Hopefully it's Empress Janice. I'm sure she'll make a mention of this in her program. I say to you all, continue listening to galaxyafui.net. It is an outstanding radio station. Take care. Until next strong. I am the Motivator.